You're listening to Nurture Your Zest. I'm your host, Ashleigh King, and I will introduce you to a wealth of interesting, fascinating individuals from all walks of life who will share their stories, how they've overcome challenges, and you will find out their top tips for success. Through this podcast, you can gain tips to grow and change your life and the way you see the world, and help you to nurture your zest. Hello and welcome to Nurture Your Zest. Today I'm here with Tricia from The Female CEO. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So I know lots about you, and I know that we're on the amazing Natwest Accelerator together. And I've been a fan of yours from a distance for a while. You're like the Carrie Bradshaw of Newcastle with your MacBook, you know, always popping up, drinking coffee, and just so glamorous all the time. But you've had such an interesting journey to get there. So can you tell anyone listening or watching a bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Well, the Carrie Bradshaw thing makes me laugh because I know we've talked about that before. Yeah, that was my perception of what life would be to be an entrepreneur, and I have to tell you, the reality is entirely different. But it's nice of you to say so. So my business, The Female CEO. So the CEO part of our name stands for Create, Evolve, Overcome, which is, to me, is when you're building a business. This is the cycle that you go through, especially as a female entrepreneur. You know, you're building something, you're creating it, you're evolving through, you know, all of the challenges, and you're overcoming, and then you're back to the beginning. There's always, it's that, you know, new level, new devil thing. So what we do is we're a platform that works with women across the world via our magazine, our platform, and our membership to grow and scale successful businesses, and all of the challenges that come with that, particularly as a woman. And we know there are many. So that's that's what we do. That's what the business does. I am an eternal entrepreneur. I am multi-passionate, as you know. And the Natwest Accelerator that we're on, actually, that you mentioned, that has been such a valuable resource for me. This is my third cohort going in. I just can't seem to leave it. Like every time it ends, I'm like, I need to do another one. I know you only get 3. But I went to my final one, and it's been such a game changer for someone like me who's so multi-passionate to kind of nail me down a little bit on certain projects and move the needle, because that's what it's all about. And that's probably my biggest weakness, is that kind of multi-passionate jumping around, trying this, trying that, and not really getting to full grips with one thing.
You might say it's a weakness. I see it as being able to fail fast, which is a huge part of entrepreneurship. Yes. You know, there's so much entrepreneurial research and academic theories that back up that being such a skill in entrepreneurship, to be able to try things and innovate and pivot and change. I really like what you said there about the female CEO. I'd never heard the explanation you've given there for create, evolve, and overcome. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
That is really speaks to me, because you know yourself, some days as an entrepreneur, it can feel like, what am I doing? Literally don't even know if I can pay my rent.
Yes.
You know, and it can feel so lonely, because you want to show that you're doing so well, but then sometimes that's not what the figures are saying. And I think having, for me with the Natwest Accelerator, a space to take a step back and kind of zoom out.
Yes.
You know, Stephen Bartlett often talks about that kind of zooming out, and then just looking at the metrics. I don't know about you, that's what's been so helpful for me, is like, well, what are the stats saying? And then you realize, oh wow, actually I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
You know, and having some, I think when you have multi-interests, and when you are an eclectic personality, it's so important to have things that can be tangible, measurements.
For sure, yeah. And I think it's one of those things, I think, as an entrepreneur, we have to get that balance of looking at the numbers, as you say, which is a great indicator, and something that I was really bad at for a long time, because my business started as a hobby. So getting out of that mindset I still struggle now with staying out of that mindset. But also knowing that even if the numbers on paper aren't adding up, it's, well, okay, so what other metrics are there? You know, are my followers growing? Are my free downloads flying out the door? You know, what is it? So it's remembering as well that it's not just financial, which is really tough, because that's kind of the most important for most people for lifestyle. But yeah, I think as well, knowing what the metrics are and knowing that you can build metrics around other things than just financial is helpful, because some days you're not going to see the numbers. You're not going to see the numbers in your bank account. Sometimes you don't see that for quite some time. And having those other metrics in place has helped me a lot, not to feel like I'm just completely failing at it. 9 times out of 10, or 6 days out of 7, sometimes I've thought, this is just, what am I doing here? Like, why am I doing this? But those other metrics, and the accelerator has helped with that. And like you say, zooming out and what else is there? What else is going right?
Yeah, absolutely. And having peer support, I think, to chat
goodness.
through ideas and be like, I'm so stuck on this. Why am I so stuck? And sometimes the feedback you get from your peers isn't always what you want to hear.
No.
Sometimes it's like, well, this is another perspective of what you're thinking, but actually your client might be thinking this. Or, it can be so helpful to see a different idea of things. And I found it really helpful to just explore, different versions of stories that I'm creating for myself that aren't always true. It's that reality check, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Those peer-to-peer support groups have really changed my view on lots of things. And not only, I think it's also been helpful, like if you're around a table with other entrepreneurs and they're discussing a challenge that you don't necessarily think relates to you, but then as it goes on and someone offers some advice, that advice will actually be really valuable to me in a completely different way. And I think that's been really a real eye-opener for me as well. That someone else's issue can lead to something else that actually provides a solution for me without it being about me at all.
Yeah. So I would love to know, you've got a lot of experience that I know that people could benefit from hearing, but I wanted to know about how, you've actually grown a really big community, and mainly on Instagram. And what I'm curious about is, how do you, grow such a large community and reach people, in a way that really connects with them? And what are the unique issues that female entrepreneurs face that you've come across in your community?
Well, the challenges change all of the time. Obviously, our Facebook community is just over 3,000 strong now. Our Instagram community is just over 12,000. So Facebook and Instagram have really been pivotal for the business, and certainly in terms of who we're talking to and who our audience is. Of course, the issues facing women drastically changed during COVID. So before that, it was, women who want to maybe having children, going back to work, not going back to work, starting their own business, having all of the things to do. During and just post-COVID, that really changed dramatically into trying to work from home, trying to even work in corporate, trying to work in that space when the kids were at home and the partners were at home, or whatever that looked like. And that led to things like anxiety, never feeling like you were leaving the office, not having that boundary. And those things became really real during that space of time. And I think the world has changed dramatically as a result. Look at the businesses who are now offering hybrid working. Businesses who really now appreciate the value of the mums, who are trying to get it all done, and still, were forcing themselves into the office every day. Their performance has increased tenfold. So on the other side of being at home, because they're at home and they've got that little bit of extra space and give, the upside of that is that they're not forcing themselves into the office and worrying and feeling all of that, mum guilt. So then their performance is now better because of hybrid work. And so now they can get out the house if they want to, which is a big difference to being stuck in. And, they've got the balance. So I think there's been a lot of readdressing the balance in the last couple of years, and we're seeing that. We're seeing a result of that. Also, obviously lots and lots of people, men and women, starting up businesses, realising that they don't want to commute to an office every day. It again brings its own challenges working from home, as we know. But at the same time, I think it's coming around for the better at the moment. That's what I see in our communities. Building the community was was an accident. It really was. Like, it was an accident. You know, it started, this whole business started as a blog, actually, you know. It was my, and it was called The Female CEO. And I was working corporate. I was 20 plus years in charge of finance and HR for a top 4 property company. Did that for a long, long time. But I was always multi-passionate. So I would, you know, climb to the top of the ladder in my job and then be like, okay, what's next? Rather than just relaxing into, well, this is nice, you know, this is good, I'm doing this. Rather than that, it was like, okay, so what else can I do? What else can I do? I'd started several businesses. I was making the most ridiculous mistakes, like everybody does, and everybody thinks it's only them, and it isn't. So I started writing a blog about, and it was just a funny blog. It was meant just to be humorous. It was true. Just about, you know, the meetings I was going to and things I was saying and just all of these things that I was just making stupid mistakes with. And I wasn't even writing under my own name because, you know, I was high level in my job, and I thought if anybody reads this, like, nobody's going to have anything to do with it. So I was writing under a different name, and I started writing under The Female CEO. And what happened was I found it was this tiny blogging platform. I don't even remember the name of it now. And women particularly were coming back to me and they were like, oh, I thought I was the only one. Like, hold my beer, wait till I tell you what I've just done. And then we started sharing these stories, which was just, it was wonderful. And that's really how it began, you know. Our community was my mother, a girl I used to work with, and a couple of women who were sharing this information with me on email. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if these women knew each other? Because we all feel like we're on our own, and we're not. So I thought, well, I'll just open a little Facebook group and put them in there, and then we can just swap these stories. And that is how the Female CEO community started. Like that was literally the moment, turning on that Facebook group, that it began. And it for about 2 years, it was hard work to grow that community, because once I decided I wanted a community, then you've got to start looking for people, and then it was putting the blog more out there, and then I started telling people it was my blog, and, you know, you become a bit more confident. And I remember my partner, and we've still got it actually, he bought me, he had a cup made for me for my coffee, which said 250 community members, and I was only at about 100. And he was like, this is where you're going to be at the end of the year. And I was like, dream on. Like, this is hard work, like, that's not going to happen. And now we're at 3,000 plus. And I look at that mug all of the time and think, when I got that, I thought, there's no way. You know, and it's that kind of, it's a real visual reminder in my cupboard every day that I look at and think, wow, what a journey, you know, from where we were to where we are. But yeah, it's been a challenge.
It's pretty exponential growth from that mug to where you are now. I mean, even 2,500, you've surpassed that, and 3,000 now, and all your group members on Instagram. It's amazing. So you mentioned it's been a challenge. One of the things that I'm curious about, I think it's amazing when you find something that you love, that you can have passion for and you can nurture, and it's really beautiful when you're doing your soul work, your purpose work, you know, things seem to fall into place. Yeah, and there's also hard lessons to go through as well, that we have to learn sometimes. But one of the things I was going to say there is, I think it can be challenging as a creator or a content creator to keep up with when we turn the marketing machine on and we start to put the content out, because although this content, it's amazing that it resonates with people, and you feel like, wow, other people are connecting with this. It makes you feel really special. At the same time, there is pressure on content creators to, you know, interact with all their comments and like and reply to things. And it can be quite exhausting if you're wanting to keep up with the algorithm changes and grow your community and create new content and serve that community, because especially when it's a free community. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, you know, how do you look after yourself with those challenges? Because I know for me, I find it really tricky, and sometimes I have to turn the tap off and say, I can't do any more content right now, even if I've got some in the back, you know, in the back catalogue. It's it's just so much to try and keep up with the notifications. So have you noticed that you work with a lot of content creators and other female, business owners? Do you see that as a theme or an issue?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head by sometimes you just have to turn it off. I mean, our marketing machine runs pretty robustly most of the time. But there are many, many, many days where I just switch everything to do not disturb. And I'm like, I cannot do this today. We were just talking before, Ashleigh, about, having a busy week. So I'm already tired this week because I've looked at my calendar and it's just packed. But I've already booked next Monday off. So I know come the end of this week, I am going to need that break and nothing is going to interrupt that break. So if I can plan that a week out. So I've learned now to take notice of the events that are going on around me and when to step back. So for the marketing machine from the outside will continue to run on Monday. Our posts will go out just the same. My members' email will go out just the same. Our affirmation of the week will go out just the same. There'll be an autoresponder on my email. So if you were looking at the business from the outside, and you probably wouldn't notice a difference, but I will not be in that business on Monday. I know when I'm going to need my rest. And Monday's going to be that day. But it is a huge problem, especially for female entrepreneurs, because we tend to take on so much. It's community-wide, it's a huge issue. And I think everybody has to find their own way. For me, batch creating content, putting things out in advance, using free tools like, your buffers or the Facebook. Yeah,
Hootsuite,
all
those sorts of things,
that sort of thing. Those free ones have been invaluable to the business because if I know I'm going to have a busy week, I'll plan 2 or 3 posts. And again, from the outside in, the machine just keeps going. Keeping up with the demand is a whole other issue, of course, and that's just a learning curve, and it depends on the business. I find that across our community, every business is different with that as to how you keep up. For me, I have to schedule blocks of time in my day where I'm going to check my emails at this time. I'm going to respond to, requests at this time. I'm going to look at my Instagram DMs at this time. That's the only way. And I have to batch those because otherwise I would spend all day, every day, just responding to things. And of course, that doesn't get anything new done.
Well, that's it. You could spend all day just replying
Easily.
to messages and answering questions. I've started to do this, so I get lots of questions in my inbox or tagged in Facebook posts, what kind of podcasting equipment do you recommend? And I'm like, well, come along to my workshop. Or,
Yes.
What I've started to do is start to write blogs. I haven't released any of them yet, but so that I have a backlog of content that I can go, here's a great YouTube video that I did on the subject, or, because you answer that question over and over and over, but it's content. Everything's content,
Everything
right?
is content, yeah.
So that's certainly a way I'm trying to manage my diary better. I did want to ask around networking. So we're both in the northeast of England, and it's got a really thriving networking scene. I realised last week when I was looking at my diary, and what in the UK recently the Queen's passed, and we've had a time of mourning, and I wanted to be sensitive to that, to people who were maybe feeling upset about it. And so I was looking at my networking, and I was thinking, well, what do I want to go to this week? And I had 8 things in my diary. And I cancelled 6 and I went to 2, one of which was the Natwest Accelerator, which we're both on. And another one, I can't remember what it was, but it was something important that I felt was really good. But I was thinking to myself, well, why in the first place was I signed up to 8 networking events in 1 week? That's like as if I was my own business development manager or sales manager. And I was thinking, well, if you are busy, sometimes networking can be a luxury. And I think this is why I wanted to ask you, you could network all the time, but what you're doing is you're also networking globally. So by building a community where you are interacting with women all over the world, you're actually positioning yourself as a thought leader, but you're also building networks. So if you, for instance, went to, I know you've got contacts and people all over in the States and, North America, Canada, those places, as well as other parts of the world. But if you wanted to go on a business holiday, I have no doubt that you would have people you could meet up for coffee with. And so what's your take on, the value of networking, but how to do it in a a time efficient way? And what are your tips around that?
Well, firstly, two things happened when I started my business. One, we joked about the Carrie Bradshaw thing, because I thought I had nothing better to do than leave my job, wear fabulous clothes, and sit in coffee shops and meet fabulous people and network all over the Northeast all of the time, and drink coffee or fizz. That was what I was going to do. And 2 weeks after I left my job, COVID hit and everything shut down. So out of necessity, my networking was online. It just was, it's just how it went. So it wasn't how it was planned at all. But also when I started the business, just going back a little bit, I deliberately, made the decision to go worldwide as opposed to go local and then worldwide. So I'm kind of doing things backwards. I'm only now really picking and choosing events in and around the area to attend. And that's just because of time. So for me, it's been a little bit easier in terms of picking and choosing what I go to, because my diary's already so full from, as you say, people all over the world. So our editors are across, I think it's 9 countries at the moment. And the networking opportunity there has always been huge. That was really fueled by the COVID pandemic, because we had to do that. There was no real other way to network at the time, which made global networking so much easier. So because our editors are all over the world and they all write in different specialist subjects, it's kind of easier for me to reach out to them, but like, who do you know who does this? So my business was built on responding to community needs. So someone would come to me and say, okay, I love this last blog you did, because I write about startups usually. But do you have anything on money mindset? This was right in the beginning. And I would say, well, no, I don't. Like, I could probably rustle something up for you, but it's definitely not my forte. So I would go out into our wider community and say, who knows a great person who writes about money mindset? Who's a great money coach? And I would get some recommendations. All of our editors, by the way, I've taken all of their courses. I've done their work. So before I've ever brought them onto my platform, because I know that the women I put in front, women and men now, that I put in front of my audience are tried and tested. They're the best at what they do. So I had to network by necessity to go and find, say, a money coach, which is Alana, who's in Switzerland. And I had to go and find her and bring her into our world. But by doing that, she brought her network. So if you look at it, how our network has grown so extensively in the past few years, it's collaboration. So my entire business was built on collaboration. So I'd collaborate with someone who brought their own audience. They'd bring them into the community. I would share, of course, their work worldwide through our magazine and through our platform. So that furthered their network. And then they would bring that network back again. So it's this constant, accidental in some respects, certainly in the beginning, cycle of growth, which is it just perpetuates, it just gets bigger. We're just coming up to, I think we might be on our 20th editor now. And again, each person just continues to bring their own network. So it hasn't been a struggle in that respect. It's been quite organic. But honestly, Ashleigh, you amaze me with your networking capabilities. Like, I am astounded by what you can achieve. I think I asked you one question one day and I got like 30 women coming back to me and going, I can talk to you about this. Ashleigh introduced us. And I was like, wow, I don't know how you do it. Like, I really don't know how you do what you do.
Well, I think this is what you just said about collaboration. I always say, one of my values is collaboration over competition. Same. And we also talk about, at Flamingo Heights, the studio we're recording this, finding your flock. So I think if you find the people who support what you do and who you can reach out to for whatever you need, that's the best way to network and grow. And also helping other people, I think it creates a lot of goodwill. I believe that, things do go around in a really positive way. I know that in the past I've given too much. I don't know if you can empathize with that, especially as a business owner starting out. I did so much for free. I still do sometimes. I support quite a lot of charities. But what I've started to do now is I now choose 2 charities a year. So I'm working with Coco Charity, who help they help families and women in Uganda, Tanzania and Rwanda and Kenya. And honestly, I'm all tongue-tied all of a sudden. And also Grace House, who help kids and their families who have learning disabilities in Sunderland. So those are two really important charities to me who we're supporting this year. But I think having some boundaries around how much you give is important. But in terms of network, I think you're right. It is amazing. Like, you can put a post up and say, hey, I'm going to be here. And then all these delegates are all of a sudden booked for something. And I'm always surprised and shocked at that, that, we can have people follow us in what we do. But I think the thing with that's really interesting to me is the fact that we can use our voice. And if you have a platform, you want to use it to help create, positivity. Yeah. And so it's really nice to hear that. Thank you. But I think network is more about what you give than what you get.
It definitely is. It's always about what you give, and it's, for us, it's about giving back to our community members. So, going out in search of those people, those experts in their field, and bringing them to our community was a labour of love. It's not something we get paid for. None of my editors are affiliates. If we recommend something, it's because we genuinely believe in the product or service that they offer. And I think that's been really key to our core messaging, is that we're here to help you. Our website, if you look at the website, there must be, I went to try and retag some of the blogs the other day, and I quickly gave up when I saw there were like 500 or so blogs on there. And these are from experts all over the world, including myself, who they're willing to give their time and attention and their contribution to our community because they're genuinely helping people. And it's just, every time I look at that blog section, I'm almost overwhelmed by the level of value there, and it is genuine value. That's all it was created for.
And it's free content, right?
Absolutely,
which people can go and take in and read and absorb, which I think is amazing.
There's a huge amount.
Yeah. I'm really interested to know, you've got so many editors now and so much content being written all the time. Have you ever had an instance where maybe you've put out something that hasn't gone down very well, or you've had a negative reaction from your community, or you've ever experienced that kind of thing?
Thankfully, we haven't actually. Our editors who write for us, like I say, I'm super careful about what we choose, and I read everything personally. So I could easily outsource that part of the job. I know my community, so I'm really, really careful, and I will always, I think, retain that level of it. I am kind of the buffer. It goes through me. I've never had an issue, to be honest. Everything they put out is always, they know the audience. I'm very, very clear. So we talked about boundaries. If I take someone on as an editor, there's a set of boundaries. This is what we're looking for. This is the audience that we serve. This is what they love. This is what they're into. This is what you're here for. And then we have these boundaries. So I've never actually had an issue, but I think that comes from setting it up right in the beginning and having those set rules. So we haven't, I have witnessed, of course, I'm constantly reading other people's comments and reactions. And even to last week, with the week before when the Queen passed away, I saw a lot of negativity on the platforms around, one of the particular ones I think was Boss Babe. I was really shocked by the reaction on Boss Babe. They're a largely American audience, and I think it's different with a largely UK audience. We have both. I did put a post out about the passing of the Queen. I didn't get any negative reaction on it. I think I pitched her as being the original girl power, for what in the time that she came to power and the things that she did. And I had a really positive reaction, but there's been lots of the big issues in the press over the past few years where I've seen really negative reactions. Like I say, luckily we haven't been part of that. I always reach back to my editors if I think it's something that maybe would have affected them more than myself, and I'm like, is this sensitive enough? Do you think this would strike the right note? And the key for me is always to do that from the heart. I do it with good intention, the best of intention, and I've always been okay with that. And I think even if you do get a negative reaction, because we see it, we see it all the time, I think as long as you know you did it from a place of care, of it was heart-centered, if you like. I think you've got to be comfortable in that, because there will always be someone out there who doesn't agree with your views, and you have to stand for something. I wrote a blog about that. You're never going to please everybody all of the time, and nor should you. You have to show what you stand for and be willing to stand by it as well, because you can get an even more negative reaction if you then try and retract it. So if you're going to say it, you have to be able to say it and stand behind it, which we always do. And like I say, thankfully, we've always had a good reaction to that.
It's exactly right. Sometimes it's about the choices we make have consequences, but also, it's not always about the mistakes. It's how we step up and take responsibility for our actions. Yeah, absolutely. I'm like you. I'm also always watching other communities and other influencers and seeing how they respond to different things. And I think there is an interesting, it's very interesting, some of the issues that might present in a North American audience or a Western audience compared to maybe other parts of the world. I have a lot of listeners in India and in Africa who have very different interests to the States. So I'm always, interested in the feedback from my audience, because I get such a mix of different perspectives, and I think it's important to share different stories, which is really true. Okay, well, what I wanted to ask, before I ask my favorite question, I wanted to ask, so you became an entrepreneur, but how did you do it? You had an amazing job, going after promotion in corporate, and then you decided to throw yourself into this roller coaster.
Why would you do that to yourself? Well, where it came from, it's hard to say. Like I said to you earlier, I was always keen to do new things. I'll give you an example which doesn't even relate to work necessarily, but I have a cousin who's deaf, and I wanted to sign. Now she does speak and she signs. So our family don't need to sign around her, because she's perfectly capable of having a conversation. She lip reads. But her friends would come over, and it was this constant battle for her of having to translate between you and them and you. And she was just in this constant state of exhaustion in the middle. And I thought, well, I'll just learn sign language, because to me that was like, I'll just learn sign language. I don't have this, there's something in my brain that doesn't have this limitation. So I don't have this starting a magazine. I don't know how to start a magazine. I don't know how to speak sign. I'll just learn it. There's no filter there for this might be difficult, So I went off and I learned sign language. And that was one of the things, I think that's what started it, actually, because I did it alongside my full-time job. I had no idea how long it would take or how hard it would be. It was really tough, but I really loved it. And the passion was there because I love her and I wanted to make her life easier. And this has been the theme throughout my life now. So the female CEO, I love my audience. Like, I genuinely care about them and I want to make their life easier. And this is what I notice now as the recurring theme. And this is what keeps me going. And I think as an entrepreneur, this is what keeps all entrepreneurs going in one way or another is I care about what I do. I care about the people I serve. I care about the communities I'm involved with, the charities I work with. And it's that conscious remembering of that point. I think that if you don't have that, then you're probably not, you're not cut out to be an entrepreneur. In my opinion, I think it's the core theme in one way or another that runs through all of the entrepreneurs I speak to. I interview people all of the time, of course, and this is what I see. So for me, that was kind of how it started. And then I passed my sign language exams. I did all of that. And it was so what's next, And I started working with, again, purely accidentally, I fell into the world of personal development. Learning about startup coaching, because I'd started up a couple of businesses myself and I was making these hideous mistakes. So I wanted to figure out how to get better. So I did courses and I started got to networking, going to events with women. And I thought, well, why don't I have my own women's group? So then I had my own women's group. It was part of a franchise. I ran that for about 2 years. It was amazing. Some of those women in that group are my editors today. So because I knew when I'd met them, they were the authority on the subject. So then they came with me. So again, it's been a gradual build-up, but getting into working with women in business was a real game changer. I think that was where I finally sort of thought to myself, this is what you've been looking for. It was the thing that really, I could have done it all day long. I was running groups, I was running a community, and as well as doing my full-time corporate job and, going after the promotions and all of that stuff. And I wasn't tired. And I knew then, like, it wasn't tiring to me because I just wanted to do it all of the time. So it was a hobby business for sure. I had no intentions of leaving my corporate job at that time, but it did give me that outside interest, but it actually made my corporate work better because I was more engaged, because my creativity was flowing. So if I'm the type of person, if I'm just doing one thing all day, every day, my creativity it just hits the flow. And I just can't seem to get going with anything. But this meant that I was bringing my best self to a lot of different areas of my life, which worked out really well. And then I'd done it for about 2 years, give or take, with the group. And then I decided to take the physical group online, mostly because your first one was always free. It was like a cost for membership. And I was getting these women coming to the group who had these amazing ideas. Like, they were blowing me away with their ideas, and they were engaged and they wanted to do these things. And then they would be either, I don't know, they might be pregnant, so they might be leaving their jobs, or they were thinking about leaving their jobs, or whatever it was. And a lot of the time they couldn't afford to join a community like ours, but they really needed our help. And it just killed me. I was like, I can't. And of course, you can't do anything with that. It was a franchise, so there was a price to pay. And plus, of course, it was more than worth the price. However, I knew I wanted to create something that there was no barrier to entry for any woman who wanted to do this stuff. They could get going and build till they had enough money to join something else. So I knew I wanted to create that journey for myself and for them, which is how the business became the Female CEO and went online to become the platform that you see today. But yeah, it was still a hobby, for a good few years. And it wasn't until 2019, so I was working, again, corporate, full-time, and my dad got really sick really quick. My dad was, when I used to send out, I used to do this thing I don't actually do Friday emails anymore, but now I'm thinking about it, I quite want to go back to it. I used to send out something called a she-mail on a Friday. So it was just an email for our women. And I would send it out and it would just be a blog. There was never a sale or anything attached to it. It was just a blog about, this is what I've been thinking about, or, this is something to try, or whatever. Something that would resonate with the community. And my dad was always the first person to respond. So he would always email me straight back and be like, this was great, and I feel like an empowered woman, whatever it was. But he would always email me straight back, like instantly. Sometimes he was the grammar police, which is fair enough, because I did read them back sometimes and think, yeah, I should have proofread that first. But he would send me like this feedback. And it became this thing, like every Friday I would get this feedback. So he was like my biggest cheerleader, for all of this stuff that I was doing. My dad worked corporate all of his life. He was the director of several companies. And, I used to go to him for all this advice. I'd be like, what am I going to do with this? Or what do you think I should do with that? Or, and I got this phone call this day and he just couldn't breathe. Like he couldn't get his breath on the phone. And I was freaking out. I was like, what is wrong with you? And he was like, oh, nothing, I'm fine, I'm okay. It's just, I don't know, I just can't get my breath. And I've been to the doctors and they've said just to go to the hospital on Monday and have it checked out. And this was on the Saturday. And on the Sunday, I got a phone call to say he was in hospital. He'd gone up to the hospital because it got worse. And my dad was fit. Like he would go to the gym, he would walk, miles. He'd semi-retired. Again, which was so unusual for him because like me, multi-passionate, doing always helping other people. So he had actually semi-retired and I went to the hospital to see him and he was on oxygen and he was like, and they thought he had blood clots on his lungs, lots of little blood clots. And I sat with him, and he really wanted me to leave, like I knew he did, because he was a no-fuss kind of person, he wanted me like out of there quickly as possible. And the doctor was like, I think we'll just give you some medication and we'll just get rid of it and, you'll be fine and we'll get you home in a few days. And he was due to go on holiday that week and he was like, can I get on a plane? And the doctor was like, no. And he was so upset that he couldn't go on this holiday. Anyway, that was on the Sunday, and over the next 5 days, he got worse. He was moved to intensive care, and he passed away after 9 days. Now, to me, that was, I don't even know how I can describe this, and I don't talk about this very often. So it was like, I liken it to someone walking into my life that week and just dropping a bomb. And then there was just debris and devastation. And I didn't know, I couldn't see what parts to pick up. There was just, the only thing I really remember about the days after was watching Breaking Bad. Just because it was the most ridiculous thing to do. But I was like, I just need something that I've done before that I can just focus on, because I couldn't focus on anything else. Like, there was just nothing. He actually had pulmonary fibrosis, which is, it's terminal, but they didn't know he had it, and it was fast onset. In fact, it usually comes on over years, but it didn't. And it was, he'd had a couple of issues over the past couple of months, but nothing that would give anything like this away. So I sort of found myself in the aftermath of that, not actually knowing anything, not knowing where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, if I wanted to do anything. You know, it was complete and utter devastation. And I mean, my dad was my hero. Like, he was my constant. I have a great relationship with both of my parents, but like, it's my dad, you know. It was like, it was all of the things. And I eventually realized, I have to say here, my corporate employer at the time was amazing. They couldn't have done more, cared more, given me more than they did. They were fabulous. And after about a month, I went back to work, having still no actual idea what had just happened to me or my life. And as soon as I walked in the building, I was like, I don't belong here anymore. And I knew. And it wasn't like maybe I don't belong here. I no longer belonged anywhere. And the only thing I knew was that life was too short. That's the only thing I knew for sure. It's a question that I ask my entrepreneurs in the Spotlight. If you ever look at my Spotlight interviews, the one question is constant is, what do you know for sure? And till that point, I didn't know anything for sure. But then, that's what I knew. And I was really honest. I sat down with my employers and I was like, this is not going to work. And they got it. They were like, you know, they were shocked and they didn't want me to leave, but they really supported my decision. They're great people. And that's where it started. And I already had the business as a hobby. So I'd been growing the community. I'd been, you know, putting out the blogs. We had the editors. So things were happening. I think it was it a magazine at that point? I don't remember. Yes, it was a magazine at that point. Because up until then, that month was the only magazine we ever missed. Because I had nothing in me to make it. So I did have the business, but it was a fun thing. You know, it was a business, but it was something I just enjoyed doing. And from May 2019, pardon my language, like, shit got serious. Like, I knew that I had to do this. I knew he would want me to do it. I knew he would have supported my decision. I knew that he would have been cheering me on every step of the way. And now there's a lot of times, it sounds so cliche, but I'm like, I just want to make him proud. Like, I really do. And I think a lot of the things that we do, my charity work made my dad super proud. I've worked with lots of various charities over the years. It was one of the things as well when I worked corporate that I wanted to, that I did a lot of, again, outside of work. So he loved that stuff. And I knew that doing this, for all it's really busy, also give me that freedom of time and reclaiming back my time to do all the things I wanted to do. I was no longer restricted to not being able to work during certain hours of the day. I could work any hours of the day. But that's where it started, and that's where it, from then till now, has been the journey. Like, nothing in my life has ever been the same since that day. And I say nothing, and I mean nothing, like not business, not personal, not everything changed. And it's readjustment. And I think lots of people go through that. I think lots of entrepreneurs have that, not always, but they have that, and not always as dramatic, thankfully, but that moment of this, something's got to change here. And for me, it was that. And that's what... And now, I mean, I think forever, that's what will propel me forward, and it's my time, my way.
Yeah. Wow. So powerful. Simon Sinek always says, start with why, and I can hear him. Your why. I can hear how much your dad meant to you, and just... I can just imagine you now with sending out your emails every time you check your responses, just thinking of your dad and how he used to be so proud, and how lush is it that he was on your mailing list, and, he wasn't a woman, but he was so supportive, Yeah.
Yeah. What was really interesting, I know this is kind of a spiritual thing, if you like, and I don't even know how it happened, but I still used to check, like, who'd opened my emails. And I always used to hope I'd see his name. And for about a month after he passed, that email got opened. But he didn't know, obviously, no one had access to his email account. But that email was opened. And sometimes it was opened a minute before it was sent.
Wow.
I don't know. Somebody's probably going to come back and be like, yeah, that's a thing. But a minute before it was sent, I was using MailChimp at the time, which I don't now, but... it was always opened, and it was always a minute before it was sent.
Wow.
It's not even possible.
Well, maybe there's a message
maybe
in there somewhere.
Maybe there is.
So, what an incredible story. I'm really conscious of time because I know you have a call to take and make. But I'm so grateful for you sharing that. I do want to ask, you've been through a lot. You've experienced all kinds of things in your journey, and you give so much, and you serve your community so well. And I love that you lead with integrity. I'd like to know my favourite question. What is your number one word to nurture your zest?
Ooh, prioritise. I've learned it the hard way, but yeah, prioritise. And sometimes for entrepreneurs, I would say that does have to sometimes be financial, because we've all got to keep the lights on. Because if you don't look after the finances in your business, and this was a mistake I made. I kept treating it like a hobby when it was no longer a hobby. When I didn't have an income, I was still treating the business like a hobby because I just wanted to help everybody. And while that's admirable, and you should, you still have to look after yourself. So prioritize. Make sure that you're prioritizing your self-care, your financial well-being, and your community.
I love that. Thank you so much. It makes me think of something I read recently. There's a guy called Dan Martell. He's an entrepreneur, a tech influencer who has ADHD, and I really look up to him because people with ADHD don't always make money because sometimes we can be impulsive spenders or all kinds of things, but he's been really successful. But one of the things he says is actually when you have a platform, you can give so much more because, if you're giving everything away, you're not going to ever have the impact you want.
Yeah.
So if you actually build your platform and give to your platform, you're going to have an amazing impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's that thing, of becoming the hub. We can work as a business, or you can be a business who joins a hub, or you can become the hub.
Yeah.
It happened quite naturally for us, but becoming the hub, so that's, where you can becoming the community is a huge advantage, and it's a lot of fun. You can really have some fun with it. And that's another thing. Just enjoy the process. Wherever you can, enjoy the process.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Nurture Your Zest, and I've been your host, Ashleigh King. You can find us online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Nurture Your Zest, as well as our website and YouTube channel. If you've liked our episode today, please give us a follow or leave a review or any comments. We love reading these. We look forward to catching up with you again soon as you learn to nurture your zest.